Welcome to the Enriching Book Club, where we take the greatest ideas ever written and bring them to life for the modern mind. Which timeless masterpiece are we unlocking today? Let's find out.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a piece of literature that is, well, it's honestly one of the most chilling and prophetic things ever written, George Orwell's 1984. We're not just going to do a simple plot recap here. We are going to completely deconstruct the absolute mechanics of control. We're going to look at the exact blueprint Orwell laid out for a totalitarian society. And trust me, by the time we wrap this up, you're probably going to look at our own world just a little bit differently. To do that, we're mapping out this world in 5 parts today. First, Welcome to Oceania. Second, Anatomy of a Rebellion. Third, The Invincible System. Fourth, The Totalitarian Blueprint. And finally, 1984 in Our Reality. I want to start things off with this exact thought. Power is not a means to an end, it is the end itself. Just let that sink in for a second. Normally, we think of power as a tool, right? A way to get wealth or security or to build a utopia. But in the regime we're about to explore, power is the ultimate goal. The sheer act of control, of inflicting suffering, that is the entire point. And that incredibly dark reality is the engine driving everything we're about to see. So, let's jump into part 1, Welcome to Oceania, a world of perpetual war. Our setting is Airstrip 1, which used to be Great Britain, but is now just a tiny province within this massive superstate called Oceania. And Oceania isn't just governed by a harsh regime, it is an entirely manufactured reality. It's built on 3 main pillars: perpetual war, omnipresent government surveillance, and historical negationism, which is really just a fancy way of saying they actively erase and rewrite history. They don't just rely on police to maintain control. They use endless, completely fabricated conflicts to keep the population in this exhausting, constant state of fear and dependence. Which naturally brings us to part 2, Anatomy of a Rebellion, human dignity versus oppression. Because in a world this incredibly bleak, someone has to push back. Enter Winston Smith. Winston is a low-ranking member of the ruling party, and in a deeply ironic twist, he works at the Ministry of Truth. His actual day-to-day job is literally to destroy the truth. He tweaks historical records, alters photographs, and changes newspaper articles so that reality perfectly matches whatever the party's narrative happens to be that specific day. It's a mechanical, totally soul-crushing gig. But deep down, Winston absolutely despises the regime. He starts this inner rebellion, desperately trying to find an underground resistance group known as the Brotherhood. Along the way, Winston falls into a forbidden love affair with a coworker named Julia. But what's really fascinating here is how completely different their approaches to defiance are. There's a really stark contrast between these two. Winston represents the fragile human spirit. He's deeply analytical. His rebellion is entirely intellectual. He is clinging for dear life to the concept of objective truth and memory. Julia, she is completely pragmatic. Her rebellion is strictly physical. She honestly doesn't care about overthrowing the party's grand philosophy. She breaks the rules purely for personal pleasure and immediate tangible freedom. Together, they kind of represent the 2 distinct sides of human defiance. Moving on to Section 3, The Invincible System, the Architects of Control. You absolutely cannot talk about 1984 without talking about Big Brother. But here's the crucial distinction we have to make. Big Brother isn't a real, breathing person. He is a manufactured, infallible, and immortal symbol. He's the imposing face on the posters watching your every move. The party created him specifically to draw out the most primal human emotions: love, fear, and absolute loyalty. He is the ultimate figurehead, designed top to bottom to command complete psychological submission. But while Big Brother is the face, O'Brien is the chilling reality of the party. Winston and Julia actually think O'Brien is their ally in the resistance, but spoiler alert, it's a trap. O'Brien is a high-ranking inter-party member, and his betrayal is absolute. He represents the cold, highly calculating intellect of the regime. He doesn't just want to execute Winston, because that would make him a martyr, right? Instead, O'Brien uses his sheer brilliance to systematically dismantle Winston's human dignity. Through systemic, horrific torture in the dreaded Room 101, O'Brien breaks Winston's mind until Winston genuinely, truly loves Big Brother. It proves that the party doesn't just want your obedience, they literally want your soul. Again, power is the end goal. Let's transition to Section 4, the Totalitarian Blueprint, Psychological Warfare. Okay, let's peel back the fiction of Winston and Julia for a second and look at the actual literal mechanics Orwell designed. The first major tool in this blueprint is Newspeak, and this is absolutely brilliant. The party invents a highly restricted language. Why? Because if you control the language, you control the mind itself. They systematically delete words from the dictionary. Think about it, if you literally don't have a word for freedom or rebellion, it becomes literally impossible to even articulate the idea of fighting back. The party uses Newspeak to trap citizens in a psychological cage.
And that perfectly sets up the next core concept, doublethink. This is the ability to hold two completely contradictory beliefs in your head at the exact same time and genuinely accept both of them as true. The party tells you 2 + 2 = 5, and through doublethink, you just abandon logic entirely and accept it. It allows the government to dictate what is real from day to day, forcing people to completely abandon objective reality in favor of complete subservience to the party's current truth.
The physical enforcement of all this is, of course, the surveillance state. The party relies on omnipresent telescreens. These are basically two-way televisions that you are never, ever allowed to turn off. Just imagine the sheer suffocating weight of that, knowing you are being watched and listened to at all times. In your living room, at your job, everywhere. By eliminating all privacy, the party completely strips away your basic human dignity and enforces absolute obedience through constant paranoia. Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, 1984 in Our Reality, Parallels to Modern Society.
So the crucial point is, how does a blueprint written over 70 years ago map onto our world today? Well, let's draw some direct analogies, because they're pretty staggering. The surveillance state? It isn't just fictional telescreens anymore. It's the very real omnipresence of smartphones, social media tracking algorithms, and facial recognition. We literally carry telescreens in our pockets. Then you have Newspeak. We can easily see echoes of it in the hypersimplification of internet slang and the extreme polarization of online echo chambers that actively limit nuanced thought. And doublethink maps perfectly to the modern spread of fake news, where objective facts are just routinely dismissed in favor of deeply entrenched partisan narratives. And to be clear, we see these mechanics operating across the entire political spectrum today, totally independent of any one ideology.
And let's not forget the macro level either. The pursuit of power for power's sake is vividly alive around the globe right now. Modern authoritarian regimes operate by utilizing this exact type of psychological warfare, exercising tight economic control and maintaining absolute dominance over their populations. The mechanics Orwell warned us about, they aren't just science fiction. They are an active, working playbook being used by oppressive regimes today. Which brings us to this final provocative thought. Orwell warned us about a government that would forcibly put these chains on us. But when we look at our phones, our algorithms, and our deeply polarized discourse, I have to ask you, are we willingly adopting the totalitarian blueprint through our own technology and discourse? It's a terrifying question for sure, but it's one we absolutely need to answer for ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you next time.